You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 27.
Some of them really didn't adjust to my way of doing things, but then I didn't adjust to the way they did things either. You know, it kind of went both ways. So there's some headbutting going on there a little bit.
Welcome to Change Your POV Podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Hello and welcome to Change Your POV Podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Lazary. Today we have a special guest. His name is Chris Ripka. He is the host of several podcasts. Some of those include Average to Awesome, Saloon 7, and Ron Real with Chris Ripka. If you haven't checked out any of those podcasts, I highly encourage you to go and do so. They're relatively new. He's got a lot of great things coming on. He's got some guests, different formats. It's really cool. He's an Army veteran, and I look forward to sharing with you his story. So sit back, relax, and we'll get right into this interview. But first, a word from our sponsor, Audible.com. If you like listening to audiobooks like I do, whether it's a commute to work, at the gym, out walking the dog, whatever you got going on, I listen to audiobooks all the time. I got a special treat for you. If you head on over to changeyourpov.com/free book, you can get your free audio download and a free 30-day free trial from Audible.com. Again, it's changeyourpov.com/free book for your free 30-day trial and your free audio book download. So go check it out right now. All right, let's get into this outstanding interview with Chris Ripka, already in progress.
Today, I'm here with Chris Ripka, and I'm not gonna do you justice by trying to read through your bio, so I'm gonna let you do that on your own. But I just wanted to say thanks for coming on the show. It's really a pleasure to meet you and get to learn more about you and share you with my audience. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm married. I've got two children, both daughters. I've spent 17 years in the military, worked full-time for the South Dakota National Guard for about 8 years as the public affairs assistant. Served overseas in Afghanistan, in Kuwait, Iraq for a little bit. Kind of did the whole gambit. Had a few different MOSs, from being a medic to an artilleryman. I finished up as an infantryman. In 2010, I ETS'd and with a medical retirement, and that's kind of where I'm at now.
So you say artilleryman. What was your MOS specifically?
13 Bravo.
Okay, I was a 13 Fox.
Oh, forward direction control or fire direction control?
No, that's 13 Echo.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, I was the FO, forward observer, out on the hill.
Oh, yeah, the fun job.
Yeah. We were the guys that were praying like hell that you guys were putting the numbers in correctly.
Well, it's a good thing I wasn't the one putting numbers in, because I probably would have. My dyslexia could have kicked in real quick, I think.
So what were you firing? Were you on Paladin?
No, we were on the 109E. Well, that was the 109E6. We were shooting the 1908s, the Toads.
Okay, but the caliber was still 155?
Yep. And we trained on the 109E5s, which is the one right prior to the Paladin. But
yeah. So you fired any Copperhead?
Oh yeah, we fired several of those dirt darts.
You say dirt darts. So I don't know if have you ever been on top of the hill when Copperhead comes over?
Yeah, yep, I sure have.
Oh my God! Well, you can definitely tell when one of the fins malfunctions, because that thing starts to tumble in the air, and you could hear it tumbling.
Yeah.
And it's just a scary ass feeling, man. I mean, nothing makes a pucker like seeing a Copperhead tumble through the air, man. We had a few fall outside the firing range. I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. I was in the Army for a better part of 10 years and started out in the 4th Infantry Division. and then went to Korea for a year and supported first the 506 infantry up on the DMZ, and then came back to 1st Cav, also at Fort Hood, Texas, and then deployed to Iraq with first BCT, 1st Cav Division, and was in Baghdad from '04 to '05. And of course, you spend all the time training, learning your MOS, and then you actually go to the show and you do something completely outside of your MOS. So it was definitely an experience for sure.
Oh, I know how that goes. Afghanistan, I was there '04 to '05, and we went over originally to do, can't remember exactly what they termed it, but it was more or less, it was supposed to be doing security so the EOD could come in and, demine their mined zones.
Yep.
And we ended up doing security for an engineer company building a road from Tarankout down to Kandahar.
Okay.
So our mission changed completely once we got in country. But yeah, we were trained up on how to deal with unexploded ordnances, and yeah, that was there wasn't a whole lot of unexploded ordnances by the time we left.
Yeah, I mean, I worked a lot with our primary mission in Iraq was our troop. Our Colt platoon was attached to the Brigade Reconnaissance Troop, and our primary mission was route reconnaissance and counter IED patrols. So basically, we were responsible for an 8-mile stretch of road within our sector and patrolling it 24/7 with 3 truck sections and QRFs, and we were also the Brigade QRF. And so anytime we came up on a suspicious object or a confirmed IED, we had to do the cordon and, near and far side security and call up the EOD guys. And I just, after watching what those guys do, I just no amount of money, man, would convince me to be able to do that job. There's no way I'd want to do that job for sure.
Now, did you guys have the Warlock systems on your vehicles?
Well, it's funny that you say that because yes, we did, but there was 2 versions of it. There was like the Alpha version and the Bravo version.
Yeah.
And they were so big and bulky at the time. So basically, for the listeners out there, the Warlock, it's like a anti-IED jamming device that's supposed to jam the different frequencies that command detonated IEDs are being remotely detonated from. And so the A version has like a certain set of bandwidth, and the B version has a different set of bandwidth. And it's too big to combine both the A and B together on the one truck. So we did have them. We had like an A. I think we had 2 A's and 1 B. But because they were mounted in those trucks, we didn't always use those trucks when we were out on the route. So we had them, but we weren't employed them 100% of the time. And then the other problem is if you're out on the route and you're running the A series, and you get command detonate, it's only 50% of the bandwidth. So if the bandwidth is a different version or a different, flavor of bandwidth, and you got hit with whatever. And we were, the only time I know for certain that it worked was when we were actually getting ready to leave Iraq, and we were being replaced by 3rd ACR. No, we replaced 3rd ACR. We were being replaced by 3rd Infantry Division, and we went and set up checkpoints to kind of help guide their convoys of vehicles and connexes and everything else they were bringing in. And there was this intersection on this road where we had set up basically, like 6 trucks. It was a pretty complicated intersection that we were trying to navigate and get these guys through. So we ended up there all day long. So we set up these checkpoints and we're flagging the convoy through. So we had people that were flagging and the other people that were just kind of out in the residential neighborhoods just doing overwatch and security and things like that. Because anytime you're set up for any length of time, it just opens you up to, sniper attacks, small arms ambushes, or even car bombs. And so we knew we were going to be there all day, so we had a pretty heavy presence there. And one of the trucks that was on the intersection actually had one of the Warlocks. I can't remember which version it was, but it was there and it was on. And like I said, we were there all day, probably 8 hours. And then when everything was finally done and the last convoy came through, we packed up, hopped in our trucks, and started heading back to our fob. Well, as soon as we got about 300 or 400 meters away from where we've been sitting all day, like 2 IEDs just went off. right where our trucks were sitting, man. Like literally we were sitting on top of these IEDs all day long. And then, we finally drive away and it blows up. So that's like, I could either whoever detonated it was sleeping all day long and just happened to catch us as we were leaving, or that Warlock thing worked, man.
Yeah, well, we had a guy from a Minnesota National Guard unit. We called him Warlock. We and the reason why I brought up the Warlock thing is because of him. We would go out every morning doing the same type of route recon type of stuff, making sure that everything was clear, no IEDs. And one day, and they were driving those Meerkat mine detectors, those things that look like a road grader with the two big arms that come down off the sides.
Yep.
They were driving one of those. Well, we were about, I'd say, 100 meters back, and we see him stop the vehicle, drive back and forth a couple of times, stop again, jump out with his handheld mine detector, went over to an area where it was on the road, ran his detector over it. Then all of a sudden he started kicking at this little mound of dirt.
Are you kidding me?
Now, us being 100 meters back, every one of us probably puckered up that instant, eyes about as big as watermelons. And our driver couldn't get that thing in reverse fast enough to start moving backwards.
Oh my God!
So he was our Warlock.
Wow, what was he doing? I mean,
he was just crazy. He'd been in the EOD for 14 years. He said, "I've seen everything. I've done everything." And
that's crazy, man. Death wish, yeah, Mr. Warlock. That's for sure. That's cool.
We all got those stories of that one guy that does those crazy things.
Oh yeah. Well, there was this one guy. This is kind of, I think it's a funny story. It's probably not, but so we were training. Well, at the time when we were there, it was called the Iraqi military trainees, I guess if you want to call them that. They were called ICDC, or Iraqi Civil Defense Corps.
Yep.
And so the ICDC, once they got trained, they ended up kind of graduating into the Iraqi National Guard, and then the Iraqi National Guard ended up becoming the Iraqi Regular Army.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it progressed. So at the time, these were the ICDC. So this was literally like, teaching them how to march, teaching them how to hold a weapon correctly, telling them that AK-47s are supposed to have the buttstock on them. Otherwise, they'll, the flash burn their faces when they bring them up to all that good stuff. So we were kind of babysitting the section of these guys, and of course they traveled around in those little white Toyota pickups.
The Prados.
Yeah, everywhere they went. Yeah. So it was like, 4 guys in the cab and like 16 in the bed or whatever it is. Yeah. and so we end up we find this suspicious object, and we're pretty familiar with the route, and we know in the land where nothing is normal, it's you eventually learn how to pick out things that are abnormal. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we saw this abnormal something on the ground, and we knew it was definitely suspicious. And so we pulled off our security and did all that. And of course, these ICDC guys, they're just so anxious to get killed. I just can't understand what the hell their problem is. They just want to just go and do. And we're calling the EOD, and we're waiting for the EOD guys to get out to where we're at. And they just want this one guy, this one ICDC dude. He wanted to just walk up and just, I guess, diffuse it himself. and we're like, no, man, stay back. We're like, EOD's coming, just wait. We had an interpreter there to kind of help us, talk about that and explain it to him. And he was just hell bent on going up there and just being the hero of the day, man. And we're supposed to advise them, but it was like, at the end of the day, they had their chain of command and their lieutenant and their sergeant or whatever. So there wasn't a whole lot we could do at this point other than just tell him not to. And he had enough, and he just went up there to, I guess, pull the wires out of it or whatever. And as soon as he got up to it, man, that thing exploded, and it was a ball bearing IED.
Oh, good Lord.
I don't know if you had any experiences with those, but it's just basically a huge claymore that went off, and this dude just lights out, man. He was done. And the ICDC guys, they ran up and scooped his lifeless body up off the ground and, put him in the back of the truck, and were chanting and, carrying on. And I'm like, what the hell did you think was going to happen? I mean, we knew this thing was an IED. We had EOD on the way out here, and he just walked up there and he got killed. So, I mean, it's not funny, but it's like, damn.
Well, there's aspects of the story that are pretty humorous. However, the end of the story is a little bit of a downer.
Yeah.
The irony of that thing, though, is about 2 weeks prior to him joining that ICDC, he was probably making them himself.
So it's funny you say that because these guys actually lived, the section of the guys of these ICDCs lived on this fob, and there was like a section of these buildings that were kind of cordoned off and designated as like the ICDC barracks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lived on the fob with us. Well, it wasn't the fob I lived on. It was the fob south of the fob I was on, but still part of our brigade. So it turns out like each of the fobs had their different flavors of mortar attacks. And it seemed like it was either the same groups of guys going around to each of the fobs, kind of lobbing rounds, because there was definitely a pattern to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this fob that these guys were living on was actually one of the larger fobs in our AO. And the rounds, they'd usually come in threes, like three rounds would land, and then, nothing would happen for weeks. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, 3 more rounds would come in. And so it was very random, but it was always 3 rounds. So as soon as you heard the first explosion, you ran for cover because you didn't know where the other 2 were going to hit.
Right.
But you knew there was going to be 3 of them in total. And there usually was. And so anyway, make a long story short, these rounds, they started to come in, and they were just landing in these random places inside the fob. And then like a few days later, the rounds would land, but they started to like walk onto more strategic targets like the dining facility and the maintenance bay and like the ammo depot and things like that, right? And it was like little bit over time, these 3 rounds just started making their way towards more valued targets, and we're like, there's definitely something to that. And being a forward observer, we were trained in crater analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to bore our audience about what crater analysis is, but basically we have a way to be able to identify the direction that the rounds are coming in and the distance that they could travel based on the size of the round and all that. But so we had an idea of where these guys were firing from. We just couldn't pinpoint exactly when they were going to fire. Well, one day some guy was walking like to the dining facility, and they see one of these ICDC guys kind of like looking down at his feet, kind of very carefully, kind of 1 foot in front of the other, walking weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he questioned him, and he got like, got the chain of command involved, and it turns out this dude was actually pacing off where the last rounds had landed to these other targets. So these ICDC guys were actually working as insurgents inside the fob, and they were basically adjusting the rounds and communicating back to their buddies. We ended up capturing the mortar team, and turns out the mortar team that were lobbing the rounds were like cousins or brothers or somehow related to some of the ICDC guys inside the fob. So yeah, I mean, it's funny you said that, because as soon as you did, that's exactly what I thought about. But I mean, a lot of people think that these insurgents are just dumb, roughneck, shoot them up, kill them up, don't give a shit. But at the end of the day, the insurgents they weren't dumb. You know what I mean?
No, they sure weren't. I mean, that's the same thing over in Afghanistan. I tell people all the time that they're some of the most intelligent people I ever met.
And and the problem with it is, and I don't know about Afghanistan, it's probably the same there, but like in my example, like from 03 to 04, it was the 3rd ACR was there, and they were there for a year, and then we came in, so it was a complete 100% changeover of personnel. And every time you have a complete changeover, you've got to learn all over again. That learning curve is so steep. And then when we leave, then 3rd Infantry Division comes in and replaces us, and they've got to learn all over. And so every year, you get this new, fresh meat where all these new people come in and have to relearn everything. But the insurgents are there, and they just get smarter and smarter and smarter. They're not changing over ranks like we were. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So the things that we were wise to at month 8, month 9, they could repeat, the easy things that they were getting away with us on, month 1, month 2. They can just, pull out their old playbook and be like, all right, let's do these again.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously you're a veteran. So talk to me about your transition out of the military. How did it go? Was it easy? Was it hard? Was it what you expected?
I've been out since 2010 now, and I can say that I'm honestly still trying to transition. It's completely different world. I was a National Guard, so a lot of people think, oh, you're National Guard, you're a part-time guy, so you're a civilian every other time. I was working full time for the National Guard, so I was active duty pretty much my entire National Guard career. And anybody who knows anything about active duty National Guard, it's not exactly like the regular Army. However, you still have your chain of command, you still have your military bearing that you have to maintain at all times. So it's a big adjustment when you're coming out of the military and you get that first civilian job. They do things completely backwards than what we're used to. That military decision-making process where there's a set sequence of events that happens, between your planning phase and your making it happen phase. And in the civilian sector, it's, hey, let's make it happen, and if it don't work, let's just keep on trying to figure it out. And it's always, hey, go ask that guy, he's been here the longest.
I struggle with the lack of SOPs or standard procedures, or like you said, a defined chain of command. I mean, I struggled. I mean, I've been out since 2005, and I still struggle with that kind of thing.
The thing that it has done for me, I'll say this though, is I have been in more management positions than I care to have been in, just because, one company sees how you work and how you lead your crew, and then now they're over there trying to get you to, enticing you to come over to their company and maybe lead a crew over there and do things for them. So I've seen a lot of that happen to me over the 5 years that I've been out. But even with that happening, you change things the way you know how to change them, and for me, that's a military way. So I led my crews the same type of way. Hey, we're gonna plan out our job. We're gonna do the job, and as we need to change that plan to fit that job, we will. It works until somebody above you starts looking down at you thinking, you know what, he's moving way too fast here. We got to get rid of him now. So I've worked myself into jobs and I've worked myself out of jobs. And that's a real common thing, I think, with a lot of military members, is they push so hard and they excel at whatever they do, because that's our mindset. Accomplish the mission, do what's needed to get it done. And those people that are never been in the military, they see that as a threat, and they want to get rid of us.
So you were talking about running crews. So how receptive was your civilian crew being run like you would have in the military? Were they open to it? Did they kind of give you any kind of pushback, or what was that like?
The first job I had coming out, I was a facility maintenance manager for a shopping mall, and I led a crew of 25 people, housekeepers and maintenance people, and some of them really didn't adjust to my way of doing things, but then I didn't adjust to the way they did things either. It kind of went both ways. So there's some headbutting going on there a little bit, but as I moved up and moved on to different companies, the last two companies I worked for, one of them being Hawkeye Oilfield Supply up in North Dakota. Now I was able to hire the people that I wanted. We started an entire different portion of the business. So I hired my own crew, and to be honest with you, I gave veterans preference. So when a veteran came to me and said, hey, I want a job, I pushed him through.
Yeah, it's because if you've got a bunch of military guys working for you, that you don't have to worry about all of the idiosyncrasies that are common with civilian folks. You know what I mean? Yep. It's hard to explain, but it's like I experienced the same thing. I was a supervisor at a company, and I was pretty much running it like I would I was a senior squad leader, before I got out. So I was running it like a squad, and you're very task, objective oriented, very do whatever it takes to get it done, accomplish the mission. You know what I'm saying? And then you got some people that are like, yeah, listen, dude, I work 9 to 5. I punch a clock, like I'm out. And it's like, and it was just a very, I think you hit the nail on the head, is being able to not only have people kind of conform to your way of management, but also being aware of your own abilities and your own kind of your mindset and being able to conform to a different way of doing things, because you can't function in the civilian world doing civilian jobs the same way you would a military, unless you have all ex-military guys working for you. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
And I knew there was an issue when somebody that I worked with at more of a senior level in the company, he handed me a book by Dale Carnegie. You're probably familiar with it. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
And all he did was just hand it to me. He says, "Here, this is a really good read. I think you should read it." And he was former military himself.
Yep.
And he didn't have to say any more. I didn't really understand what the book was about, but as soon as I started reading it, I realized he was sending me a message.
I had to laugh when you said that, because the third job that I took, managing a fairly decent sized group of people, that was part of my introduction to the company. This guy had known me prior to coming over to his company, and he said, "I want you to go through this. This is the employee manual. And then once you're done going through the employee manual, I want you to read this." And it was that book, How to Influence Friends.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny that you had mentioned that, because I had a very similar situation.
And you know what? And I'm telling you, for those of you that are listening to this that are about to transition out of the military or have transitioned and are finding yourself struggling in your positions or at your companies that you're working at, just know that, one, you're not alone. Two, there's a way out of it. And three, you need to get the damn book and read it. It's an older book. I mean, the guy, I don't know what year it came out, but Dale Carnegie, there was some, there's some section in that book where he actually interviews. He did interviews with, like Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, so it's an older book, but man, it's a timeless one, man. It's definitely. I started to read I got the hardcover. I started to read it, but I just don't have time. But I got an hour commute each way, so I got the audio book version of it on Audible, and ended up finishing up the book, listening to it in my car. So definitely, what did you think of the book? Did you read it?
I read it. It really brought home it really sat well with me, because I was raised in a family with old school values.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was reading a lot of those things, a lot of the things that were being brought up and kind of being brought to my attention were a lot of those old school values that my grandfather and my father and my mother, they were trying to instill in me as a child, that I was just too bullheaded to accept at that time.
Mm.
But the deeper I got into the book, the more it helped me recognize that all this stuff is already in me.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to let it out. I got to drop down that hardcore military exterior, and let people into my life that can make a difference in my life, and let myself be a positive difference in theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you define success?
There's so many ways to define success. I mean, we all have our own successes every single day. I mean, for me, it's just getting out of bed sometimes. But when somebody looks to you, and I guess to me, when somebody looks to you for advice because they feel that you've accomplished something that they would like to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very good benchmark for success.
Yep, I totally agree. What would you say has been your greatest failure along the way? I'm sure you've had many.
Oh, geez, I fail every day, and it's I like it like that. I like to fail every day,
Mm-hmm.
because if I don't fail every day, I don't learn how to fix those problems and succeed. But as far as my biggest failure, I would definitely have to say that I started a security company back in 2003, right before I deployed overseas. And it was a consulting company. And I saw the writing on the wall, with them using civilian contractors. That's what I was going to do. Unfortunately, the type of contract work that I was looking for I was just too small. You had to have more money backing you. You had to have, government contracts. You've had to have had like 3 or 4 government contracts already in place. And I
Mm.
was just ignorant to it all. And I didn't do enough research. So my biggest failure came from lack of knowledge, lack of research, not
Hmm.
knowing everything that I needed to know prior to going in and just jumping in. And
Yeah.
that booted me
So
right
you,
back out.
so you, I mean, it sounds to me like you knew the hands-on portion of the job, right? You knew, you understood security, but it's the business side of the business that you probably weren't keen to at the time.
No, I had no idea what it took to actually be in business.
And I can resonate with that because I got out of the army and I started my own landscaping business. And if you want me to cut grass and you want me to put in a retaining wall and pave a walkway, man, I was your guy. Because I was really good with my hands and I could definitely do that. But when I wasn't doing that, I had to do things like requests for proposals and insurance and payroll and taxes and all these other business type things that I just didn't know how to do. And so I could definitely relate to that, man. And somebody once told me, there's no such thing as success and failure. There's only success in learning. And it's so true, man.
It is. It's very true. Like I said, I like using failures every day to learn something new.
So let me ask you this, because there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line between like dropping your ruck and just quitting, right, and falling out of formation and just saying, yeah, I'm done. So when you're pursuing a goal or a dream or a project or a business, whatever the case may be, and it starts to fail or not go kind of your way, like how do you know when it's time to pull the plug, like legit, or how do you know like that it's not time to pull the plug? You just need to kind of push through this hard point in this endeavor. I mean, that's, what I'm saying. There's like a fine line there. Like, how do you know which way to go?
Well, it's the way I use I guess what I use is I still do after action reviews on every day. That's what I
Mm,
use to hold myself accountable. That's what I use to uh, create basically a benchmark for how that day went. Now, when I see each day, I set an objective. I still have that military mindset. So each day, this is how I learned how to uh, push forward and accomplish my goals.
mm-hmm.
So I set that goal. If I reached it, I reached it. If I didn't reach it, I know why I didn't reach it because I've gone through that day and I've pinpointed the little areas that I could have done something a little bit different. Now, if I look at those, say over a course of say 3 months, for example, and I'm missing my goals on a regular basis, and each time I miss my goal, those pinpointed things are either they're the same or even if they're not the same, but I'm still not making my goals. So then I try to adjust it. Maybe I need to readjust my goals so where instead of trying to reach, maybe I'm trying to reach out too far. So
Mm-hmm.
say my goal today is I'm going to talk to 50 people, and out of 50 people, I want to get 5 jobs. Well, 50 people might be too many people.
Mm-hmm.
And with the average sale conversion rate of 1 in 10, you're you would have to talk to 50 people in order to get those 5 sales. You're not going to be able to do that if you can't talk to 20 people in a day.
Right.
So
Right.
so I look at that. Once I've determined that okay, now my goals are in reach. I've done everything I can to pinpoint where my problems are. Maybe my pitch is wrong. Maybe my, how I approached them. Maybe I was standing wrong. Maybe I was too aggressive when I was talking to an individual, or maybe I wasn't aggressive enough. Maybe I didn't ask for the sale. So all these things kind of play into that. If there's continued failure, even though I've made the corrections to change each one of those things for those days,
Mm-hmm.
it's time to stop. It's time
Mm.
to evaluate what you're doing, look at yourself in a way that it, you got to look at yourself objectively, and then it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hurt to have a spouse or a close friend who's going to be real with you and say, hey, look, this is what I've noticed, and you have to be able to take that information in and use it and decide whether or not, hey, enough's enough. This isn't who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so valuable to learn it, and I think it's a learned skill. I think it's a skill set that can be learned, but to learn to be self-aware, right? And that was something that I struggled with. Well, I didn't even really have to worry about that when I was in the military. I knew what it took to be successful. I knew, you know what your promotion points are. You know what your time and grade is. You know what a good uniform looks like. You know what accountability is. So, I mean, it's very clear cut, right? So you didn't really have to be too self-aware. You just had to basically play the game and follow the rules, and you could, get promoted probably sooner than everybody else. And that's what I did. It wasn't until I got out of the Army that I realized that I needed to learn how to become self-aware. I needed to really understand not just my strengths, but understand my weaknesses and figure out, like you said, not just adjusting your approach, but maybe you got to adjust your objective or your goals,
And a lot of times when we come out of the military, our confidence levels are so high, our self-esteem is so high. It really is hard to humble ourselves to the fact that,
Mm-hmm.
we're not everything to everybody.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I came out as a staff sergeant and, senior squad leader. I was being looked at for E7. And to come out of that and end up in a job where I was just basically a Joe again, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's a tough pill to swallow, man, but it's something you gotta come to grips with, come to terms with. And hopefully I think, people really should start looking at that before they get out and not wait until after they're out and then realize, oh man, I didn't know it was going to be like this. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So what advice would you give to young career professionals coming straight from the military that are interested in perhaps starting their own business or small venture?
First, you gotta know your passion. If you're not passionate about what you're gonna start, it's gonna fail. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you got to know yourself, not got to know what you enjoy doing, what you love to do. You can't just go online and search for uh, startup businesses under 5,000. That doesn't work. I mean, you'll get a list of 100 different businesses. Oh, I think I can do that one. No, you got to find
Mm-hmm.
what you're passionate about, and then once you find what you're passionate about, learn more about it. Learn everything you can about that topic. If your passion is, weaving baskets, you want to have a basket shop, know everything about owning a basket shop. Learn the business
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. The accounting. There are so many bookkeepers and accountants out there that are just waiting for those guys that don't know anything about it, so they can go in and take advantage of those people. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to know all aspects of your business in order for you to be successful.
I agree. So if you had a time machine and had the opportunity to go back in time and have a conversation with your earlier self, what guidance would you give yourself as you were transitioning from military to civilian life?
Stay in the army. No, actually, what I would have said to myself is, "Hey, don't take yourself so serious. Just, uh, just be you, be
Hmm.
authentic."
Yeah, I like that. If so, what do you think what's the one thing you took from the military that you find yourself applying on a daily basis in the civilian world?
I touched on it earlier, and that's the after action reviews. Always reviewing yourself, always holding yourself accountable for what you did during that day. Because ultimately, you're gonna be that focus. I mean, when people look at you, they want to know that you're that guy when you're in civilian clothes. You're that same guy that you were when you were in that uniform.
Hmm.
Every single day I wake up, I've got my Army values still posted on my mirror. I
Nice.
look at them every single day, and I try to live every day by those.
Yeah, it seems hokey when you're in, right? You got like when I was in, you got
Loyalty,
we
duty,
had
respect,
yeah,
selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. We had the little tag that we had to put on our dog tags, and then we also had a card we had to put in our wallet.
yeah.
And it seems so silly at the time, but then I totally agree. You get out, and you know what? If you can live by those seven Army values, and to spell it, it spells leadership, LDRSHIP, loyalty, duty, respect,
Selfless
selfless
service.
service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. If you can follow that, no matter what you do or what job you're in or, whatever you decide to pursue outside the military, you're going to be successful. You may not be successful in terms of financially rich and a billionaire, but you're going to be successful in life in that, like you said, Chris, you're going to be authentic to yourself, and you're going to be there for your family, and you're going to have loyalty to whatever it is you find yourself doing and the people that you surround yourself with. So, I mean, I totally agree, man. I mean, like I said, it's hokey when it's just so many things that seem dumb when you're in and kind of, woo-wooey. But then when you get out, it's like you fall back on those things all the time. At least I do, and it sounds like you do too. So it's good to hear that there's somebody else out there that actually digs the 7 Army values. That's good.
Absolutely.
So what are you reading right now, or what's your favorite book?
Oh, actually, right now I'm reading Tony Robbins' new book, Money. That's pretty interesting. Touches on how some of the 7 richest men in the country, gain their wealth, and how to invest money, starting with literally, $100 in your pocket. You can start investing. So that's I'm not really all that far into it yet. But right now that's what I'm reading, and it's a really good read. It's not anything I expected Tony Robbins to write, but it's a really good read.
Yeah, that's cool. So is there anything that I didn't cover or we didn't talk about that you really wanted to share with the audience?
I guess the only thing that I would share is, just be authentic. Come out every day wanting to do better than you did the day before. One of my personal goals every day is to smile at 10 people, because people cannot help but smile back. And when you make someone smile, their day gets a little better. So that's one of my personal goals. And it sounds hokey, but then you find yourself, the more times you smile at somebody first, you find yourself as a happier person also, and your day's better. And you think, if you're smiling at 10 people, your day's 10 times better than the one you just smiled at.
Yeah. And along those lines, I can't remember, there was a podcast I was listening to, and I can't remember who it was now, but it was basically they threw a challenge out, and they said, the next time you're at Starbucks or a different, Dunkin' Donuts is big up here in the Northeast, but the next time you're at like a coffee shop, you're buying yourself a coffee in line, turn around and offer to pay for the coffee of the person behind you. And again, it sounds hokey, a little bit woo-wooey, right? And basically the challenge is you do that, and you're gonna have a different experience, and you're gonna change your day. And it wasn't really necessarily about the person behind you getting the free coffee. It was all about how it would change your day, and I didn't quite get it. So I'm like, whatever. And I was actually at a Cumberland Farms, I think, getting a nice coffee, and that podcast came to mind. And I turned around and I looked, and the dude standing behind me also had an iced coffee. It's in the morning. Everybody's just in there to grab a coffee on the way to work. And I just, threw $2 up on the counter and said, yeah, I got the guy behind me's coffee. And they said, all right. And I turned around, I looked at him, I said, I got your coffee. Have a good day. And this dude, it was $1 coffee, right? It's $1, 4 quarters. That's all it was. But this dude looked at me like I just paid his mortgage. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He was just completely stunned, tripping all over himself. He couldn't thank me enough. I thought he was gonna follow me out to my car and kiss me, man. I was like, but you know what? I went to work, and those 4 quarters not only probably changed his day, but it changed my day. That's all I thought about all day was not how, look at me, pat on my back, look what I did. What changed me was how appreciative and how unexpected just and a small act of kindness was to that person. And that's what changed me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. So Chris, where can people find more about you? Or is there something you would like to share with the audience in terms of, nonprofit organization, maybe your company? What do you want to get out there for people to kind of check out?
Well, right now, I'm actually in the middle of working on a project. It's called the Average to Awesome Reboot Project. And basically what it is I use fitness as a as a guide to personal development, changing your outlook on life. Because fitness, we can set fitness goals, we can see it, touch it, feel the differences and the changes. So when you start creating a series of successes based on goals that you can see, touch, and feel,
Mm.
you can branch that out into your everyday life. Whether maybe your marriage is not quite as strong as you'd like it to be, or maybe your job is frustrating and it's not as great as you want it to be. You can use that fitness benchmark as a way to expand into all areas of your life, and you can start meeting those goals even though they're not as tangible, but you'll still be able to feel when you meet those goals, because you'll be able to recognize the differences. So that's the program that I'm working on right now. And right now I can only be found on Facebook and Google Plus. Just search Chris Ripka, or you can even look up Fitness Motivation by Anonymous. That's another one of my pages that I put out. That's exactly what it is. It's a motivational page. It's a community where people can come together, share their stories, ask questions, but it's by anonymous. I'm not the focus. It's the people that are the focus.
That's cool.
So those are the ways you can get a hold of me.
And Average to Awesome, that was a prior podcast that you hosted. Is that that podcast is going to come back? Is also a blog associated with that?
Yes, I guess really haven't got the blog back and going yet, and the podcast is set to relaunch here in March. But it will be the Average to Awesome podcast. It'll be coming back, hopefully stronger and better than before, with a new format and a whole lot more energy.
So I don't know if you wanted to get into it, but did you want to share briefly kind of your story? You were doing this and then you were injured?
Well, yeah, I started a podcast a year ago, just a little over a year ago, the Average to Awesome podcast. I interviewed life coaches, fitness professionals, professional athletes. Would bring them on. We'd do our little interview. I'd thank them, about a 30-minute show. I went out to a friend's house because I do personal training and sports-specific training myself. So I went out to work out with some professional MMA guys that I have as clients, and one of them put me in a rear naked choke and pinched off my larynx. And once that happened, I lost my voice for a year. So there went the podcast.
Wow. I didn't know if you wanted to share, but I think that's an awesome story. It's one of those war stories. You just if you're going to get injured and you got a really cool story. That's what I used to tell people. I don't care how I get injured. There's going to be an awesome story behind it.
Typically, I'm not a professional mixed martial artist. I've wrestled on the national level in the Star of the North games. I've done very well with it, winning a couple of gold medals and a silver medal in the games. But I'm not a professional mixed martial artist. I have a lot of respect for what those guys do and what they endure. But when it all comes down to it, even at 40 years old, I still have that little fire in my gut to get in there and mix it up.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, wrestlers don't like to be on their back. So when I turned over, he sunk that little rear naked choke in, and well, my pride kind of got in the way, and I didn't want to tap out. I figured I could get out, and I didn't.
Wow. Yeah, it didn't take much either.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, I saw a Facebook post the other day. It said 40 is the new 20 until you hang around with 20-year-olds. Then you're like, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. Hey, man, so we've run out of time, unfortunately, but you know what? It was a great talk, and I would love more than anything to have you back on the show at some point and check in on you, see how Average to Awesome is doing and the reboot and everything else that you've got going on. We just met tonight, and I already feel like I've known you for years. That's just the neat thing about veterans. We all bled in the same mud, and we're all family. And it doesn't matter when you served, how you served, what MOS you were in, where you went, where you didn't go. We all wore the uniform. We all had the U.S. flag on our shoulder, and we're all part of a family. So for that, thank you for your service, Chris. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing with the audience all of the great content. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast. You can find all the show notes by heading over to changeyourpov.com/episode 27. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We've got a lot of great content headed your way. If you want to hit me up directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. And finally, if you want to take advantage of a free download, head on over to changeyourpov.com/free book. And you could get your free 30-day trial and a free audio download from audible.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.